King Charles III is touring various parts of Nairobi. Earlier on, he started off in Kariakoo, went to the UNEP headquarters, then Karura Forest, and now is at Nairobi Street Kitchen, meeting artists, sampling some Kenyan food and cuisine. And the live pictures right there show you him viewing some of the products from artists in Kenya. What that seems to be products, leather products, and he is being shown and given more details about them by a vendor right there on your screen. And of course, Kenya, Nairobi Street Kitchen is an area that just embodies Nairobi's urban culture. And of course, it seems that the king is keen on connecting with the youth of this country and just taking a look at some of the things that they are up to. We can see right there, he's talking to what seems like a puppeteer holding one of his products in hand and basically speaking to the king and explaining what that is all about. And this is just part of the king's tour. We do understand later on he will be traveling also to the coast, a part of Kenya that is close to the heart of the royal family, given its history and various members of that family that have been able to tour Mombasa in the past. And of course, also given that he visited Karura Forest, it just shows the the importance of the environment and environmental conservation to the royal family. And this is going to be an ongoing coverage that we shall give you as we go along. All right, and this is one of the bigger, or rather biggest visits that Kenya has had so far. And of course, given the current regime, President William Ruto seems to be taking the bull by the horns when it comes to foreign relations. And as we have seen him touring various countries and various presidents touring Kenya, and this is just the latest part of that. And I'd just like to welcome to the show Michael Agwanda, who's a current affairs expert and analyst, who's joining us all the way from the United States to give us his view of what this means, especially when it comes to Kenya-UK relations. Michael Agwanda, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of the visit to Kenya by King Charles III and what this means for Kenya-United Kingdom relations, especially given that this is the first Commonwealth country that he is visiting after ascending to the throne.
I didn't quite hear you clearly. Can you ask again, please?
Just like your take on the king's visit, given this is the first country he has chosen to visit, he and the Queen Camilla. What do you think this implies when it comes to Kenya-UK relations in terms of importance and also moving forward, what it means for the future of the two nations' relations?
Thank you very much, Trix. We as a country are glad that the king, His Majesty the King, and Her Majesty the Queen of England have come to Kenya. Kenya and United Kingdom have great relationship from colonial time to this very moment. The question that everybody's asking is this relationship going to continue the way it ought to be, or is it not going to continue? And what does the visit of the king signifies as to the relationship between Kenya and United Kingdom? I can say that Kenya was expecting to have so much from the king in terms of us answering quite a number of questions. And some of those questions are very good to the injustices that were caused during the colonial time. Some of those questions are in regards to the land that was taken away from the farmers. Some of those questions are in regards to the land that were taken by the British. Who did they go to? Why couldn't they go to the owners that the land were taken from? But most importantly, Kenya has also had a great relationship in the past where pretty much as a colony of the British, Kenyans will only need a passport to go to Britain. But now there've been so much red tape to a point where you wonder whether there's any relationship so far. Now, when King decided to come to Kenya, King Charles III decided to come to Kenya, some of these questions were expected to be addressed. Have they been addressed? Perhaps not. Perhaps not in the best way. I think he's alluded to the fact that United Kingdom is sorry for the atrocities and the violence meted to the Mau Mau, Mau Mau participants, and some of their, some of the stuff that we felt that the colonial government did not do right. And he said sorry to it. But then what are the steps after that sorry? That is perhaps what the country needed to hear. When you say sorry, we know that a number of Kenyans went and fought in World War II, and not all of them have been compensated for that reason. Some of them are now into their 90s. And I have my own uncle who is in his 90s, and he gave me his papers, and he told me if ever they will ever think about compensating the people who are
Michael, if I could interject shortly. Last night, we did have King Charles saying he felt, as you have pointed out, that he felt the greatest sorrow and deepest regret, as you have mentioned, for atrocities suffered by Kenyans during their struggle for independence from the British colonial rule. We don't know that there was loss of life, and that call for there to be some form of compensation for the descendants or those who are still alive who were part of that struggle for independence. But this seems to be a departure from how Queen Elizabeth II handled these calls, because these are not new calls. They have been happening for a while. What do you think that says about his style of leadership, even if it's a ceremonial? What do you think it says about King Charles's way of doing things and relating to former colonies?
I think one of the things that we need to agree on is, one, there is a saying, there is a statement that is made. What is more important than anything else is the action part of it. Has it been done? Has the compensation been done? Have they captured everybody that suffered these atrocities? Have they covered everybody that went to the war and fought for, in World War II, that were literally drafted? Drafting means you're taken there by force and not against, not willingly. And have they been, documented and taken care of and compensated for that reason? To that point, if that is not done, this same question is going to come again and again. And if this question keeps on coming, it just severs the relationship, if anything. And you might think that this kind of questions could easily be put under the rug, but 60 years down the line, it's still being asked today. So 100 years to come, our generation, another generation is still going to ask these questions. So it behooves the king and the queen and the United Kingdom government to make sure that this thing is settled once and for all, so that it doesn't reoccur every time a relationship or a visit takes place like this. I want to see a visit like this for a king in the next several years with great celebration and not asking tough questions, not the president mentioning the atrocities that took place. That means they've not been addressed. And if they've not been addressed, then the president, who is the host, has the right to ask those questions on behalf of his citizens, on behalf of the people who suffer. And I think that is really, really key for King Charles III to remember, that you cannot put these things under the rug and forget about it.
Okay, why we cannot put such things under the rug or just forget about them, we have to put in context the magnitude of some of these atrocities, because during the 1952-1960 Mau Mau revolt, we had some 90,000 Kenyans being killed and maimed and 160,000 detained. So I'm just wondering, given that Kenya is not the only colony that some of these things were happening in, how realistic realistic are these calls for compensation and reparation?
I support the UK government for coming out and saying, hey, I'm giving you X amount of money to help in the education system. I think US government, UK government could do much better than that. I strongly believe that if that was just to, sanitize his visit so that it looks like he came with some goodies, the UK government has so much money that you cannot say that that's the only thing the king could work with to support education system. I wish he could have even added some little money to support those who went to war in World War II, to support those that suffered during Mau time,
right.
Families that really, really suffered. I wish he could have thought about even mentioning some of the places where the British buried some of the Mau fighters, that their families are still fighting today and wondering how their graves could be found. And if he had come with some money, say to National Museum, and said, look, I want you to find out where some of these leaders of Mau were buried, that would make sense. I'm not saying this doesn't make sense. This helped a great deal. But then there are bigger issues that perhaps we need to look at in terms of building the relationship between the United Kingdom and Kenya, because these are known facts. And if you don't address them to conclusion, then you'll still have them being asked every time. What I hate most is when a guest come home and you're reminding him of the atrocities he committed some times back, and you don't want to address them conclusively. If you have an egg over your face, I don't think that's what Kate wants to do. I don't think that's what any leader wants to do in the world. Any leader wants to visit a country where they're warmly welcome and then pleasantry are exchanged. And most importantly, they look at the future. But we seem to be looking at the past more than the future in this case.
Indeed. And I'll get to that 4.5 million pounds in a bit, but I'd also like to talk about, apart from that negative legacy from the past, there's also there seems to be an abiding environmental conservation theme that has surrounded the relationship between Kenya and the royals and the royal family. And even when you look at some of the key events, for example, when his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, came to Kenya, she was trying to enjoy the Kenya's environmental treasures when she found out that she was actually going to be queen. So it seems to be a very important theme, because even during this visit, the remainder of it too, the king is expected to tour conservation work in the wildlife parks and travel to the port city of Mombasa. What do you make of that? And do you think this is partly the reason why Kenya is really big on making sure we are guarding our own environment?
I quite did not understand the question well, but the only thing I can say is I heard about environment. Issues of environment are key. Now that's a global discussion today as to whether the environment will continue to be maintained or there will be development in terms